Hello, everybody, and welcome to your injury update. But this time, it's not the Premier League. Oh, no, it's very different this time. It's the World Cup. We're talking about Qatar 2022. We were here last week. Ben gave you all the insights. This week, we're going live. This week, we're putting the attention on the FIFA World Cup injury table as well. So make sure to head over to premierinjuries.com for that. But as always, I start every show asking how you are, Ben. Yeah, you're looking fetching today, but how are you doing?
Thanks, Jason. I'm in a mad rush, as always. I've just literally walked through the door. Been at kids' football since, well, I left the house at 4:15. Games, training, drop-offs. Mate, honestly, absolutely brutal. So I never even caught any of the Brazil game, other than I did manage to see the goals. I've seen the two Richarlison goals. Other than that, I've seen absolutely nothing. So, but a very decent game by all accounts. So that's just typical.
I mean, this is your, return to play injury kind of status. You have to be there for the kids. So this is what keeps you fit and healthy. On top of your very impressive fitness regime, I must say, you do keep it up. You put a lot of people to shame. But we're going to start off with the teams. Just to remind everybody, I'm sure lots of people are used to the process, but we're going to go through teams alphabetically. But if we miss anybody, do put in the questions and we will answer them for you. So we're going to start off with Argentina. Any updates around them?
Yeah, nothing sort of fresh to report in terms of their squad management, or certainly nothing to their key players. It's pretty much as you were with regards to that 26-man squad. We've seen Christian Romero. He returned against Saudi Arabia. He missed those last few games for Tottenham with ongoing muscular problems, but he was able to get through around about an hour of that game. It remains to be seen, what will happen to that Argentinian lineup following that shock defeat. The pressure's on. One of the tournament favourites. They need to go out and get a result next time out.
They really do. And if they don't get a result, they could be out already, along with the Germans, who we will address a little bit later. But just in terms of, I may be your expert opinion in terms of Argentina, do you think that they played quite reserved, quite conservatively as well, due to the age profile of their squad? Quite a few of them are older, Messi, Di Maria. But then also, was there a risk in playing Romero because he's not played for a long while for Tottenham?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's always going to be the case when you come to international tournaments. It's the biggest stage. Everybody who's involved, certainly in that 26-man squad, will want to be out there regardless. And managers will be more inclined to maybe take a risk because, particularly, during this group phase, if you don't get off to a good start, the pressure then begins to mount. And, before you know it, you could be out. And that's your opportunity gone. And for some of these players, this might be the last chance that they have within their career. So, the last opportunity to perform for the national team on the world's biggest stage. And Christian Romero, was it a bit of a gamble? I dare say it probably was. But look, there was, other mitigating factors in terms of that result against Saudi Arabia. So it wasn't necessarily just about the one or two sort of selection decisions. They were a little bit passive. Maybe they even believed that, they, especially after going 1-0 up from that Lionel Messi penalty, maybe they thought, that they had already won the game and maybe switched off a little bit, particularly, following, so soon after that half-time interval. Maybe they just got caught on the hop. And I expect Argentina to bounce back in the second game.
Maybe they took it as a given as well. The Saudi result, they just thought win, not play too hard. It's an interesting one. Australia, we shall skip because they're one of the many teams. There's 32. We can't cover all of them unless people ask specifically. But Belgium is an interesting one. Again, another team who I think the age profile has gone against them. The likes of Toby Alderweireld and Jan Vertonghen still in that back line. People, I think, will be asking legitimate questions. They found that a very difficult game. But Romelu Lukaku, I felt, was a big absence because Michy Batshuayi did all right, but there was a few opportunities there where I thought could have been 3-4-0 if they had a much better striker on the pitch. What's the update with him?
Yeah, Roberto Martinez has spoken about the potential return of Romelu Lukaku. We know that he's been hampered throughout this season with ongoing muscular problems. There was a hamstring issue there. Only recently returned and then again suffered a little bit of a setback. So the worry and the concern here is we're having a player who's back in this at this tournament at the highest level, and he hasn't played competitive minutes for quite some time now. And it was key, I think, what Roberto Martinez said when asked for questions with regards to Romelu Lukaku. He said, if we follow the advice of the doctor, then he'll be ready for match day 3, as it were. And I just thought, you know what, maybe the result against Canada, which was fairly fortuitous. The Canadians, particularly in that first half, done really, really well. Alphonso Davies, if he had scored a penalty on another day, then that maybe would have put Martinez in a little bit of an uncomfortable situation, and maybe he might have felt the need to maybe rush Romelu Lukaku and push him back. I certainly wouldn't rule him out of being included in the matchday squad for that second game. But ideally, I think we're looking at maybe minutes from the bench potentially in match day 3. And then, hopefully as the Red Devils progress even deeper into the tournament, he can gain, those minutes and then ultimately put himself in a position to be able to start. But we know that the games are coming thick and fast, and, it's over in the blink of an eye. So that's what they're the risk and reward decisions that Roberto Martinez will be, working out at this moment in time. But what we do know, Lukaku is training well. He's certainly stepped up his recovery, but he isn't going to be that match. He's not going to have that match sharpness or that little bit of fitness.
This is the follow-up question that I wanted to ask. I mean, would you realistically want a player like that to be in your team? Past the group stage, they're all highly competitive games. There's going to be a lot of energy spent. The fact that he is coming back from an injury, is it true as well? He's not even trained with the group yet. This all sounds like a recipe for, he's brought back on, maybe immediately injured, or he might just not be really fit to play in the match in terms of that sharpness. He might not be able to put those things away. Whereas Batshuayi, he's not as good a player as Lukaku, but at least he's a bit sharper and more ready.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a similar situation, haven't we, with England and Kyle Walker, and to a slightly different degree, James Maddison. Ideal situation is, you would have these players available and getting minutes maybe from the bench from match day 1. Roberto Martinez will want to get Romelu Lukaku on that pitch as soon as possible, because, like you say, once you reach those knockout phases, second round, quarterfinals, semi-finals, then they're ultimately going to be big games, and you can't really afford to carry any passengers, because the quality of the opposition that you're likely to face will just not allow you. You have to be at your best to progress through to the latter stages of this tournament. So I think there'll be part of that in Roberto Martinez's mind. Batshuayi will certainly start, all being well, in match day 2. And like we say, it depends on the result or the outcome of that second game will probably determine what starting lineup Roberto Martinez goes for match day 3.
So we'll move from the Bees of Belgium to the Bees of Brazil, and the game has just finished. Was there any big injury news from that, Ben, or are you not privy to that at the moment because you've just scooted back home?
Yeah, well, I literally have just walked through the door there, but we do. Anthony, who had missed, games for Manchester United with that hip flexor problem, noticed that he was included in the match day squad, and this is, I suppose, a good opportunity just to, because quite often when we see domestic football, we see players included in the match day squad, and ultimately we believe if they're included, then therefore they're ready to start. It's slightly different in international football, and in particular tournament football, where they will name players on the bench that aren't necessarily in a position or ready to start. So like I say, there's question marks over Anthony just in terms of, again, of his fitness, because he's missed those games with that hip flexor problem. But ultimately, the decision was taken to include these players, as Gareth Southgate did, on the understanding that, there's a high probability that they will get minutes within this group phase because, like I say, if you're not, then, it's going to be a big risk heading, into round 2 and beyond.
Now, one of the teams that did impress was Canada. I thought they looked really good. And again, if people do want, questions answered about Cameroon or other smaller teams, we are happy to kind of go back. But the important thing for Canada was Davies started. He looked good. Do you think that he'll be managed at all in the tournament, or is he such an important player? And it doesn't look like those injury issues really bothered him at all. He was absolutely amazing, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, Canada played really well, particularly in that first half, and then unfortunately they did fade a little bit. And there had been question marks over the availability of Alphonso Davies, that hamstring problem that had been hampering him, and a lot of suggestion that he might miss out. But he declared himself fit, a few days before that, and I don't think his place in that starting 11 was ever really in question. Like I say, you don't really get too many opportunities, particularly, playing for a country like Canada. So you need to go out there and, on the back of a positive performance, it was a disappointing result. So, I expect Canada to go out in that second game and, give it all they've got. And Alphonso Davies will be, pivotal in that team and hopefully trying to carry them forward to get a result. And, if they do, that gives them, puts them in a decent shout to maybe take them through to that second round, which would be a huge achievement.
We move swiftly through the C's to D's onto Denmark, and Thomas Delaney, he had an injury. Was it in match or was that before the match?
Yeah, he was forced off just before the break of their opener, and it didn't look great at the time. And as suspected, it's been identified as a ligament problem. Understand, it's the outer side of the knee. So the medial is the more common one that we see fairly regularly. But this is the LCL, the lateral collateral ligament, and now unfortunately that's ruled him out of the tournament. So he will not feature again in Qatar. We're probably looking at around about maybe 4 to possibly 6 weeks for that injury.
And so with the Denmark team, that's going to be a big blow, but they're one of the teams that I think could do well, and we'll see. I think the big deciding game will be them against France. Ecuador were fairly impressive, but sadly they lost Enner Valencia. I'm not sure how many people were invested in him, but the team looked quite good. They played nicely in that opening game. Is there any resolutions to his return? Because a lot of people were saying, oh, he might be tournament top scorer from the fact of he scored a brace against Qatar.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, he mightn't have been on many people's radars ahead of match day 1, but certainly after those 2 goals, I think a few years sort of pricked up, and unfortunately picked up a couple of knocks, one on the ankle, and then the one that really sort of, I wouldn't say caused the damage as such, but you may have seen him during the game icing his knee. That looks to be, I'm not going to say it's fine. You're never going to be 100%, but do I think it will keep him out of the game? Absolutely not. I'll be shocked if he wasn't available and ready to play in match day 2.
Just an aside question. Do you think we'll be seeing some injuries that would normally rule players out for a game or 2 in the Premier League, in the Bundesliga, whatever, but because it's the World Cup, because it's this stage, they'll plough through? Is that the sort of situation? Does that make your job a little bit harder as well, that you might go, oh, that's a so-and-so type of injury, but they might be back just because they'll put it all on the line for country?
Yeah, I mean, you only have to look at Kevin De Bruyne during the Euros, that decision with regards to that ankle ligament problem. I think he picked it up in the quarterfinals, if I recollect. And he was patched up, and just because they had an opportunity of reaching the finals and they got beat in the semis. I hope I've got that right, but ultimately that was an injury that kept him out for several weeks. Ahead of this tournament, Heung-min Son, ideally he only went surgery for that orbital fracture earlier this month. it's a very, very quick turnaround. And yes, he's wearing that protective face mask, but under normal circumstances, would Heung-min Son, be rushed back ultimately, maybe for his club and for a normal domestic competition? Probably not. So yes, like I say, risks are taken, and that's the worry, because like I say, these opportunities only come around at best once every 4 years. There's lots that can happen. So, if you're fortunate enough to be included in that 26-man squad, you want to go out there and you want to, perform on the world's biggest stage.
We do have a message from somebody. Saurav Saha has says, just dropping a hi from Philly, USA. So great to see that we got a global appeal here. And it is the global game at the moment. It is the World Cup. Now, the big team news is on England. You've already kind of covered James Maddison. I don't know if you want to recover that at all. But Harry Kane was the headliner. He was the big one. Lots of worries. Initially, it looked like he got through the 90 fine. There was that moment where it looked like he rolled his ankle. Then post-game, we saw that a day after he was going for a scan. Wonderful analysis by Graham Souness, who seems to know the insides of Kane's ankle, saying it was totally irresponsible of Gareth Southgate, which obviously we don't agree with. He doesn't know what's going on in the England camp, and I'm sure Southgate has a great grip on what's going on. So yeah, what is the situation with Kane? Are we going to see him against the USA, or maybe rested and back for that all-important Wales matchup?
Yeah, so watched that one, and it didn't look anything too sort of sinister. He picked up that knock, or he's seen him roll his ankle from that tackle, early after that second half. He was able to continue for a while. Gareth Southgate then made the decision to replace him with Callum Wilson. And yeah, I mean, painful, yeah, of course. Was his place against USA ever in major doubt? I didn't think so. The fact he was sent for a scan, had a lot of people worried or concerns, and the headlines were going, questioning his availability. But that was more of a precautionary. What you want to make sure is, you have great facilities out in Doha, at the Aspetar Clinic and so on. So, if they're on your doorstep, why not utilize that? And just to make sure, just for peace of mind, that you're not missing that. There's nothing underlying with regards to something with that ankle. And he was cleared and he has trained. So, barring any kind of reaction, Harry Kane should be absolutely fine. Elsewhere in the camp, I did touch upon James Maddison, still not training with the group. So this is a one that seems to be dragging on a little bit longer than, what we'd prefer, to be honest. So it looks as if, he certainly won't be getting any minutes from the start. And I suggest may not even be included in the matchday squad. Kyle Walker is obviously, he's progressing in terms of his fitness and sharpness. He's probably ahead of where we thought he would be. And Harry Maguire was another one that was forced off. I initially thought that was a head injury, the way that he was sitting down and being assessed. And you almost felt that in the present climate, he was being assessed for a concussion. However, it was illness related, caused a bit of blurred vision, a little bit of dizziness, but he's much better now and he should be absolutely fine.
I mean, we could all relate to that. Bit of a dodgy tummy after kebab, and anything happened, blurred vision, all sorts. Let's turn our attention to France, though, and really upsetting scenes with Lucas Hernandez had to come off, replaced by brother Theo Hernandez, so kind of almost a straight swap there. But it's not looking good for Hernandez, is it, Ben?
He's out of the tournament. Unfortunately, it didn't look great at the time, and suggested that there was certainly some kind of ligament involvement. And you see in the way that leg, that valgus, bent inwards, non-contact injuries, they're always a worry. And sure enough, scans later confirmed that it was ACL. So that's reconstructive surgery. So that unfortunately not only ends his World Cup tournament, but will also end his season.
Very sad indeed. And we wish him, a speedy recovery as possible. So turning our attention to Germany, and Leroy Sané was one that was causing a bit of concern. It seems to be a knee injury, but how serious of a knee injury, Ben?
Obviously serious enough to keep him out of the first game, and then also still not training with the group as it stands. He was back out on the pitch today, but he's working on an individualized program, so his availability in match day 2 is still in question. Again, not ideal for Germany following that defeat to Japan. You're going to need your best players out on the pitch, and even if Sane is past fit, again, you're going to question, is he 100% or is he just being patched up because of that first opening defeat?
Yeah, it's a worrying one for Germany. Again, kind of repeating the Argentina point. If they don't get the right result and other results go against them, they're already out of the World Cup. It seems absolutely crazy. Ghana, Iran, and Japan, I don't think we need to cover. Maybe even Mexico and Morocco we can skip over. But the Netherlands, any sort of information coming out of them. Denzel Dumfries was somebody that people worried about, but he was fine. He started the match. Any more updates from this squad?
Yeah, pretty good overall. Again, nothing majorly coming out of that. We did see Memphis Depay. He's been struggling with a hamstring problem all season. He was never expected or really in contention to start in that first game. Louis van Gaal said, with regards to his place in the squad, if he's anywhere near full fitness, I'll be taking him. But like I say, he was definitely not in a position to start in that first game. And it'll depend again on I think possibly we're looking at match day 3 for a start for Depay.
And again, I think he looked sharper though. He looked quite good in that match up against Senegal. So he might be a better kind of asset or an individual just to keep an eye on for this World Cup. But turning our attention from Netherlands to Portugal, Ronaldo, he returned to the team after stomach issues, but a pretty clean bill of health for the team after that game today.
Yeah, no major concerns. Like had that bout of gastroenteritis. There were question marks. Was it an illness or was it a Eric Ten Hag illness? Because he did miss those last few games for Manchester United as well, but arrived with the national team, and it was confirmed that he did have those stomach problems that kept him out of that friendly last week. But back in that team as well, and Portugal sort of scraped through, got off to they'll take the win. Let's just say that's the one positive for them from the win over Ghana.
Now we don't really need to cover Qatar, but I do want to talk about was it Saudi Arabia with the concussed goalkeeper?
Yeah, I'm looking at the name because Yasir Al Sharani
Yeah.
was took a big blow against Argentina. That was a collision with his own goalkeeper. It was a knee in his face. Now, initial reports suggested that it was reported as facial fractures. There was involvement of the nose, a broken nose, possibly jaw, and even cheek as well. So very, very serious. He has had surgery. Again, details with regards to the precise nature of that are a little bit sketchy, but didn't look great. One of those just unfortunate incidents where, I suppose, you worry for the health and the safety of the player first and foremost. Fortunately, he has provided updates through his social media in Arabic. So we're beholden to Google Translate to understand exactly what he's saying. But ultimately, it looks as if, generally speaking, he's in a pretty good place. But I would, at this moment, it certainly looks as if tournament is over.
What I wanted to bring on as well with this head injury, but there's been multiple head injuries already this World Cup, and I wouldn't like to say anything in terms of the medical staff or FIFA or whatnot, but from the outside, and I'm sure you agree with this, it looks like the all-important concussion protocol is not being adhered to. Would you like to kind of analyze that a little bit? Because from what I saw with the goalkeeper that had the concussion, it was farcical, the fact that he was even allowed to put a shirt back on. That was the Iran game with England. It wasted so much time, but also it looked like a waste of time because this man's health was put at an unnecessary risk.
Yeah, I mean, this always seems to happen on the international stage. In particular, if we look at the Euros, I think it was Benjamin Pavard, if I recall, from France against Germany, took a knock. It looked from video footage as if he had lost consciousness. If that was the case, there's no discussion with regards to is he able to continue. They're off. And not only that, not only was he allowed to continue, but subsequent evaluations or assessments, which are supposed to be independent as well, cleared him for a return. Now, had that been in the Premier League, for example, then there would have been he would have been go through concussion protocols enhanced, which would have meant at least 6 days out. That didn't happen. In the previous World Cup, I think it was Amrabat, maybe from Morocco, again, looked as if he lost consciousness, was allowed to continue. Now, I've had this conversation with several sort of practitioners and those who have been well versed and experienced of working on the field. And while they said, yes, that certainly looked as if that was the case, we are only privy to what we're seeing on TV from one angle, and those conversations that are taking place, we're not able to hear. So that's maybe, and I'm not using that as an excuse or in any way, shape, or form, but maybe, you would hope that these medical practitioners, these doctors, physicians, they have a duty of care towards their players. First and foremost, that's paramount. You look after the health and the well-being of that player. And for somebody who may be compromised in terms of their cognitive, ability to make rational decisions, then that decision, those decisions on whether they remain on the field of play or they're withdrawn or taken out of their hands. And you would hope that those decisions are always made with the best intentions. And like I say, so from the outside looking in, it certainly looks as if those protocols are a little bit woolly. The issue is if in the FA protocol is if in doubt, sit them out. What really does that mean? If in doubt, well, I went through a SCAT5 evaluation. We're having conversations. We're checking for any obvious changes in behavior. We're looking for memory recall. We're eliciting responses. If all of those boxes are being ticked and that player seems to be absolutely fine, then, maybe, you can maybe allow that player to continue because, not all head injuries are all, concussions. With regards to those time limitations around, and I'm quite happy for somebody to spend 6, 7, 8 minutes on the field of play ultimately, because you cannot undertake a comprehensive SCAT5 evaluation in less than 10 minutes. So that's just not possible. If you want an accurate assessment, that cannot be done in less than 10 minutes. So, the longer it takes to ensure that that player is fit and healthy and in a position to continue, then great. It's a different conversation whether we talk about the possibility of concussion substitutes and this, that, and the other. And again, not all players are present with concussion can present 24, 48 hours after the event as well. So it's a difficult call. My biggest fear, and it has been my fear for a while, is it going to take something pretty serious for the authorities, to really take a stand and to really sort of tighten up on those protocols, because that seems to be the only thing that's going to make, people stand up and listen.
It seems to be, with a lot of these situations, that force is the only thing that forces a rethink. Just to bring it back to Brazil, actually, forever QPR Sweden. He says hello from Sweden, but he also asks, I guess no news yet on the Neymar injury. He looked really sad on the bench. And also, if we look in the news, there's pictures or there's discussions that he had a swollen ankle. He came off early. I don't know if it's, overplayed, but he was crying on the bench. Was there any post-match updates that we should be aware of, or with that kind of ankle injury where he was withdrawn as well immediately? Would you expect him out at least for the next match?
Very, very difficult to say, and you could not give any kind of definitive answer because even, like I say, in the emotions are obviously running very high. And we've seen responses from Rafael Varane and Richarlison for Tottenham, when they picked up those injuries and they thought, initially your mind instantly thinks the worst. And ultimately, them injuries weren't as severe as first thought, and they were cleared and they have played or they are selected in the 26-man tournament in Qatar. I'm just actually checking if there is anything through live in terms of any updates from the Brazil camp, but we haven't had anything as it currently stands. But again, I wouldn't take too much that said post-match. I wouldn't certainly hang my hat on that. With injuries, we're certainly looking at 24 to 48 hours because they can evolve. Ankle problems, they're of all of the injuries, if I was to have to suffer one, then the ankle would be one that, I would take, because you always have a chance with ankle injuries unless you're looking at something that's pretty, unless we're talking about an avulsion fracture or some kind of serious ligament damage. Medical teams and club doctors are well versed in treating ankle injuries and they respond quite well to treatment. So, despite the quick turnaround, I certainly wouldn't be ruling any player out at this stage. Wait until a cold light of day, get it rested, see what happens overnight, and then reevaluate tomorrow.
So we're going to turn our attention now to Senegal. Kouyate was one of the players that came off injured. Another ankle injury, ironically, talking of ankle injuries. Big loss for them, especially with the fact that Mane has been ruled out as well. Player with big Premier League experience, really has been excellent at times at Crystal Palace. What is the likelihood that he's going to be able to make a return?
Yeah, so this is a prime example of a player who was, looked as to in some discomfort, a bit of distress, stretch it off. You always fear the worst. And ultimately, still has a chance of featuring in Matchday 2. So not ultimately ruled out of that, has responded really well to treatment, was hoping to do some work today. And depending, like I say, how he comes through that and see if there's, and how it responds and maybe if there's any kind of reaction. But like I say, there's an outside chance that he could feature in Matchday 2. If he just miss out, then Matchday 3 is more than realistic.
So with Serbia, we did see the return of Mitrovic today, and with South Korea, we also saw Son back into the team. I think Spain is pretty much covered. There was no big injury news there, was there, Ben? Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there's actually any more big injury news for people, is there, Ben, in terms of the last teams?
Yeah, not massively. I mean, you could talk not in injury updates, but Joe Allen has trained ahead of the game with Wales, and Robert Page has said he's fit. The midfielder's fit and ready to go. Of course, he's had a significant period of time on the sidelines with a hamstring problem. Elsewhere within the camp, for South Korea, there'll be one or two asking maybe for that Wolves connection with Hee-chan Hwang. That was a hamstring injury as well. I think he picked that up in the Carabao Cup just before the break there. He wasn't fit enough for Matchday 1, but there's a possibility that he may be back in Matchday 2.
Well, there you go, everybody. I think we've answered all the questions as well. So for now, we're just going to wish everybody themselves the best of health and the best of luck. And we will continue these analysis and live streams through the World Cup, just to keep you up with the latest injury updates. And just if anybody has tuned in a little bit late, please rewatch the video. We go through everybody alphabetically, apart from Neymar, who we did cover a little bit later. But again, that's an evolving situation, and we will release any kind of updates after that. But for now, just please do hit that subscribe button, give the video a like. Please do leave us any comments below if you have more questions after watching, and also you can tweet us at any time.